So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and taking time to learn more about our full-time professional programs, and with our focus being on the IATPL program. My name is Kathy Stewart, and I'm the manager of the Flight Training Administration at the Brampton Flight Centre. Joining us tonight is Sydney DeHoop, who's our campus administrator. And we also have Jessica Enke and Rick Stevens from AeroCourse. We would ask that for this evening, if you could mute your devices, and to please post questions in the chat, and we will do our very best to answer as many questions as possible. However, in the event that we cannot, due to the high volume of our attendees, we will have the appropriate contact information at the end of the presentation for you to reach out to the appropriate person. We are recording the session and we'll have it posted at some point. So let's get started, as we do have a lot to get through with you tonight. Okay, so last week we attended an aviation conference in Montreal, and Transport Canada was there, and they were able to give us some numbers about pilot shortage. And we learned that approximately 7,600 to 14,500 will be required in the next 5 years. So those of you who are looking to pursue this professionally and are maybe concerned about employment, hopefully this helps address the pilot shortage that we do have here in Canada. For tonight's lineup, we're going to start off by just reviewing some stuff about the Brampton Flight Centre. We're going to do a little overview of the aviation industry, what's an introductory flight, the importance of your aviation medical, commercial license requirements, career opportunities, and then we'll go to the professional programs, the administrative portion, and then AeroCourse is going to address the specific items to the ATPL ground school. So the Brampton Flight Centre, we've been training pilots since 1946. We've got 35 flight instructors on staff, including 2 certified flight test examiners. This is very convenient for our students. When they're flight test ready, we know that we have the staff that we can just schedule them to get that taken care of. We've got 22 aircraft, consisting mostly of the Cessna 172. Our multi-engine aircraft, so that we've got 2 engines on there, that's glass cockpit, and some of the Cessnas also have the glass. At our facility, we also have 2 simulators, and when the students get to the ATPL portion of their program, they go to CAE and they get to experience a level D simulator, and that'll be covered a little bit further along in the presentation. So some more facts about us. So we own the land and it's all maintained by the Brampton Flight Centre. We are a not-for-profit. We have our own on-site maintenance facilities and our own staff. We are the only school in Canada to do our engine overhauls. We are also a private career college. We have partnerships with Jazz, Porter, and Sunwing. And our graduates are employed at major domestic and international airlines. So we do have strong networking opportunities and a very strong aviation community right on site. We've got the Air Cadets, which is the Snowy Owl Branch 892. First Space Solutions, this is an aerial imagery and mapping company. The Four Seasons Aviation Company is a helicopter company that does aerial cinematography, and they also do charter flights. As well, we have our Great War Flying Museum, private aircraft owners, and the Recreational Aircraft Association is there as well. So for those of you that are excited to get started about learning to fly, one of the first things we like to suggest is an introductory flight. This is definitely a requirement regardless of attending a full-time program or part-time. Before you start any flight training, you would go up, do a 20-minute flight with a flight instructor. It's basically a first lesson. We want to make sure that you're comfortable in a small space and that air sickness is not an issue. When you do book this on our website, if you are an applicant, we just kindly ask that you select the checkbox on the form indicating that you will be applying to either the college or the IATPL program. And that way we can ensure that you get this intro flight completed before your actual student interview. And as it says on the screen, it's $150 plus tax. And if you just go to our Brampton Flight Centre website, you can find where the gift card is located. Now, the most important item for anyone that's going to be getting into flying is the aviation medical. So all of our full-time students must have a Category 1 aviation medical. So if you want to be a commercial pilot, this is the medical you must hold. There are still lots of backlogs with Transport Canada, so it is taking anywhere from 6 to 9 months for these certificates to arrive at your home in the mail. There are many civil aviation medical examiners in the Greater Toronto area and right across Canada. You can search CAMI Aviation Medical and find one that's closest to your home. The average cost is about $200. If a doctor is charging $400 or more, you might want to just make a few calls, see if you can get a better price. This is not regulated, and that's why there's a discrepancy in the cost. Let's see. And this Category 1 is not, cannot be done by your family physician. So it is important that you find a civil aviation medical examiner. So for becoming a commercial pilot, the first thing you're going to be doing is starting with your private pilot license. You'll then go on to the commercial. You have the option of multi-engine instrument rating, and then you'd go on to the airline transport pilot license. And as it says, you can do the commercial and your multi-instrument at the same time if that's something that you can balance, or you can just do each individual license and rating separately. So there are many paths that you might take to get to your dream job, and everyone approaches their career a little bit differently. Hopefully you'll do a little bit of research and find out what works best for you, what you find the most interesting. And we'll go through a few of them here tonight just to kind of get you started to think about where you could go with this. So the first one is becoming a flight instructor. So if you have a passion for teaching, or you have a great interest in aviation and you want to share that enthusiasm, this might be a good fit for you. The rating is an additional 13,000. You don't actually get this rating in any of the programs. It is separate. And obviously you're providing instruction to future pilots. You might do some ground school classes. There might be some administration duties. And of course, you're in the aircraft. Another option is the air taxi operations. So this is where you're flying an aircraft with less than 10 passengers. You're serving urban and rural northern communities all over Canada. You might be taking hunters and fishermen on different charters. And typically you're flying in supplies and maybe even doing medical evacuation. This is a demanding job, and the pilots are typically doing a lot of the work. They're loading and unloading the aircraft, and they might be helping passengers enplane and deplane. So if anyone's looking for adventure and maybe they want to go north, that might be a very good option for them. We also have commuter operations. So these are aircraft with 10 to 19 passengers. They're serving smaller communities, and they're basically bringing in the passengers to the larger hubs, like say Toronto or Ottawa, Montreal, and then they would carry on from there. Again, this is demanding work as pilots are required to complete most tasks. Regional airlines. So these are aircraft that are a little bit larger, 20 to 70 seats. And they're typically, again, feeding the carriers into the main hubs. You are flying shorter distances. And examples of this is Jazz, Porter, and Encore. And then we have the major airlines where most people will end maybe after working a few years, or maybe they'll be very lucky and be able to go straight to the airlines right from the flight school. You might be flying here domestically or internationally. And of course, we have Air Canada, WestJet, and if you were to go abroad, maybe Emirates might be an option for you. So there are different options to get to that commercial license. At the Brampton Flight Centre, we do offer self-paced, and then we have 2 diploma programs. We have the IATPL and the college. Now, the self-paced is exactly how it sounds. You can do your training at your own pace. We have ground school classes in the evenings, during the weekends, and then you can flight train when it's convenient. Maybe you have a full-time job and you can't commit to a full program, so this would be a really good option. Like many flight schools right now in Canada, we are very busy and we do have a wait list, so we're doing our best to prioritize the students that are training and where they are with their training. We are also not taking international students at the moment because we are so busy. So when you're doing your private, commercial, and night rating, you're looking at over 130 hours of ground school. You will receive a certificate. You do need your aviation medical. However, you don't have to apply directly with an admissions package. You can start your ground school pretty much any day. There's no set day every month. You have the option of multi and multi-IFR, depending on your future goals of what sort of ratings you require. And again, it's very flexible. Everything is at your convenience. And because of that, the time length does vary depending on your commitment.
Sorry about that. So I wanted to talk to you about the professional diploma programs that Brampton Flight Centre has to offer. So the focus of this information session will be primarily on the IATPL program. However, we also do offer a college program, which is a similar structure, but does not offer as many perks as the IATPL does. So to start off, the IATPL program is a 20-month program. You can apply for the program in January for a July start date. There's 1 intake per year, so it will always commence in July, and you will always submit an application package online to me in January. So this is a program designed for students with either 0 hours, or you can come in with your full PPL license. And it will bring you to get the experience to become airline ready in less than 2 years. There is a potential for direct entry to airlines upon graduation from this program. And another great perk about the IATPL program is the ability to write your ATPL exams early. So these 2 ATPL exams are called the SAMRA and SARON exams. To write these 2 exams, a pilot typically needs 750 hours of flight experience. However, with the integrated status of our program, our students are able to write these exams early at only 200 hours of experience, because Transport Canada can be guaranteed that our students are trained to a very high standard and therefore are capable of performing well on these exams. So in addition to this IATPL program, we also offer a college program. They sit in the same classes as the IATPL program does, and they complete their training on the same aircraft and often with the same flight instructors. However, they do not have access to writing those 2 exams early. So when flight training is completed in both of these programs, the college program would typically graduate, whereas the ATPL program dives into the professional exam preparation for writing those 2 exams while the college students have graduated. So just to further explain the programs, so in both programs, you'll graduate with your private pilot license, commercial pilot license and night rating, as well as your multi-engine and instrument rating. So for both programs, there's over 700 hours of instruction, 200 hours of those being flight training experience, which includes dual training, solo flight training, and even cross-country trips, which are a part of the Transport Canada licensing requirements. Both programs also have over 500 hours of ground school instruction. So again, this covers the private pilot license, commercial pilot license, and instrument rating ground school. The IATPL program also receives an additional 250 hours plus of ground school instruction, which prepares students for a career in the airlines. So like I mentioned earlier, this includes ATPL exam preparation, as well as what we like to refer to as the more fun portion of the program, which is the multi-crew coordination training, where you get to actually experience the 737 systems and experience a full motion simulator at CAE. Which is the same simulator that the airlines will use not only in their interviews of applicants, but as well as their training and certification of pilots before they go online to fly their aircraft. The other great perk to note about the IATPL program is that the graduates are qualified to work for the airlines directly upon graduation of the program, whereas in the college program, the graduates will need to get some type of job in between graduation of the program to help build their hours to get them to the airline if that's their goal. So again, just to emphasize, the IATPL program is great for those who are definitely confident in their decision that they'd like to go to the airline, whereas the college is a great program if you're not sure exactly where you would like to end up and aren't sure the airlines are a good fit for you. Just to give you an idea of what the ground school topics would include in the IATPL program, in addition to the private pilot license, commercial pilot license, and IFR, we also do several industry tours within the program. So both the IATPL and college students will go on these tours. So an example of some of the tours we've been on in the past is to the NAV Canada headquarters. We've gone to both the Air Canada Dispatch Center and operations. We've gone to Chartwright, which is a good example of one of those sort of in-between jobs between graduation and getting to the airlines. We've also toured Porter and seen their operations, as well as much more. We also have classes for both IATPL and college students that help prepare students for a career in the industry. So we help students with their job search, as well as resume development. And another great perk about both programs is that we do mock interviews in the program. So we actually have people who are on hiring staff at airlines come in and participate in these mock interviews and give the students an idea of what kind of questions and scenarios they'll face in their interviews, and just to really give them an exposure and feel confident when they do go into those first interviews after graduation. And in addition to all of these classes, as mentioned previously, the IATPL program does have advanced airline ground school. So the first half of this advanced airline ground school focuses on the exam preparation. And the second portion, final portion of the IATPL program is that multi-crew coordination training, which, as mentioned previously, includes that CAE simulator experience. So both programs, a fun fact about them is the fact that you get to fly on day one of the program, obviously weather permitting, but the beauty of these programs is the fact that your flight training is ingrained in your ground school. So you're actually working on the topics that you're learning, and that's the way it's been structured. To give you an idea of what the typical day of a IATPL or college student includes is you're usually scheduled for a flight in the morning, whether that's dual or solo will depend on what portion of your training you're in. That's scheduled some point in the morning before your afternoon ground school session. These flights are scheduled well in advance for you by myself. You have the ability to modify your reservations from a certain date out, and you can modify them to fit your training needs. You are typically scheduled for flights 6 days a week, and we do encourage booking on a 7th day. And this is to accommodate for poor weather. So November, for example, has not been a great month for flying. We've been grounded for a lot of the time. So having bookings on those rare good weather days is so vital for progressing forward in your flight training. So that's why we encourage a 7th day of bookings, just so you can make sure you have access to the aircraft when you need it. As Kathy mentioned before, we do have a lot of students right now. So we want our students to have the aircraft in their name and reserved for them if they need it. And if not, they can release it to anyone else. As in addition to flying up to 6 days a week, ground school would be scheduled up to 5 days a week. And again, this does depend on what portion of training you are in. Some days of ground school will be full long days, especially when we work with the AeroCourse team. We typically don't have classes as frequently, but they are full days of classes when we do work with them. I just want to emphasize strongly that this is a full-time commitment program. Part-time jobs are not recommended just based on past student performance. Those who have had jobs typically don't perform as well as those who are fully committed to the program and able to fly as much as possible whenever possible. So I'm just going to hand it over to Jessica from AeroCourse now to start her portion of the presentation. So please bear with me while I switch over host privileges. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct them in the chat and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Hey, Sydney, while you're doing that, maybe I can elaborate on a couple of things that
Sure.
You both touched upon. One of the things why the medical is so important is because it could hold you up. And so you want to make sure you get on that medical right away if you're interested in becoming a professional pilot. First of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Rick Stevens. I'm president and owner of AeroCourse. We've been in business. Joining me today, and very soon I'll introduce, is Jessica Inke. Jessica is in charge of the IATPL program for AeroCourse, and I'll come back and finish off that introduction. But my background is I'm a retired Air Canada captain. I retired our training captain as well. I retired from Air Canada a year and a half ago. But I've been running AeroCourse for 35 years, and we are probably the one training facility that teaches all across Canada. Traditionally, we've taught advanced ground schools for the 2 higher levels of license, which is the IFR and the IATPL ground schools. And we entered in this partnership with Brampton about 10 years ago to form this the IATPL program and develop it. And Jess is going to go into a great detail why we did that. I just wanted to give you a little introduction. But one of the things that for the training, and we've get this question asked all the time, is that for any license, like Kathy mentioned, a private license, the commercial license, and the multi-engine and IFR, there's always 2 components to any of those licenses. One is the practical flying, which everyone loves, but there's also, more importantly now, the ground school, the theory base behind all this. And that's what we specialize in. And at every stage, you have a flight test for the private, for example, and you have a written ground school, a written test at Transport Canada for the private, as well as the commercial, the instrument rating, and the instrument rating, so you understand, or if we go back, the private just allows you to fly people around yourself and passengers, but you can't take any money for it. The commercial allows you to actually work in small companies. Kathy mentioned the air taxis. To be an instructor, you have to have a commercial license, so it allows you to actually earn a living out of it. And the instrument rate, well, the multi-engine, as Kathy said, allows you to fly an airplane that has more than one engine. Traditionally is what we see now, two, but it could be even bigger, 3 or 4 engines, depending on where you go. So that's the multi-engine. And then you add to that is the instrument rating that allows you to fly in clouds and whatnot. So allowed up by reference to instruments only, we call that. So that kind of rounds off a lot of the stuff, but there's a lot of detail in there if you want to find out. And I think, Kathy, it's somewhere on the website that there's a full document, right, that maybe people could reference to read all about the types of licenses and what they allow you to do. I think it's somewhere on
Yes.
your website. Maybe perhaps
Absolutely.
if you want to get more information, you can just email and they'll send it off to you. Give you a reference for that. And that's a very good document. We spent a fair bit of time on for you, on it for you. So just so we don't take up too much time here in the class. So without any further ado, I'm gonna, as I mentioned, Jessica Inke's been working for AeroCourse. I think pretty close to 20 years, and right now she's a first officer in the 767 at Air Canada. She's a very talented pilot as well as instructor and course developer for us, and that's why she's in charge of the IATPL. And I'm just going to pass it over to her because she knows more about it than I do in many ways.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Rick. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica, as Rick said, and this portion of the evening, we'll be talking to you more in depth about the integrated airline transport pilot license program, which is what we at AeroCourse, Rick and I, have developed. This is the portion of the program that we not only have developed, but we actually run each year. So I'll tell you a little more about that as we go on here. So an introduction to AeroCourse itself, the company. We are leaders in advanced aviation training. We've been that way for over 30 years. In that time, we've conducted thousands of ground school seminars for pilots, not only ground schools, but we also produce textbooks, a lot of technical writing, and of course, we're working on developing programs like this one. And something that really sets us apart is that our instructors are all highly experienced professional pilots. And that's something that really sets this particular program at Brampton apart as well, in that all of the advanced training will be done by airline pilots. So you're really getting input from the industry, not just what you need to pass an exam, but what the airlines are really looking for. So at AeroCourse, it has always been our mission to provide students with the required knowledge to become safety-oriented professional pilots. And safety-oriented is the biggest thing that we're looking for here. It's the most important part of our profession. As Rick mentioned, the history of the course, the IATPL program, that began about 10 years ago. We partnered up with the Brampton Flight Centre based on the success of the college program. So we've been doing the integrated ATPL program ever since. And so let's talk a little more about what exactly this program is. It's a very structured and intensive program, as you probably have gathered from what Sydney and Kathy have been telling you about the commitment. But that commitment pays off because this program gets you airline ready in a very, very short period of time, which is really important, especially now when there is such a high demand. And in the airline world, lots of things in your life will depend on a seniority number, and that means that getting into the industry as soon as possible while this demand for pilots is high is really important. So the program takes students from 0 flight hours to airline ready graduates. BFC, as mentioned, provides the flight training for the private and commercial licenses. And then on top of that, we have the multi-engine and IFR ratings that are also done by BFC instructors. Once that is complete, then AeroCourse steps in to provide the advanced training portion of the integrated ATPL program. So I'm going to talk to you about the details of that. But before I do that, I want to take a look at why this type of program is even necessary. So traditionally, we've seen pilots go through their initial flight training. So as we said, we would finish our private, commercial, multi-engine and instrument flight ratings. And then that's all happening in small aircraft. After that, typically in the past, we would have started to build flight time, perhaps in smaller jobs, flying up north or something like that. And eventually, after quite a long time of building experience, you would get hired at an airline. So after many hours of experience. These days, however, things are a little bit different. Pilots are moving a lot more rapidly into the airlines. In fact, in programs like ours, we can see students graduate and go directly to the airlines after graduation, which is really incredible. But as a result, there is a bit of what we call a training gap. So in the airline world, we see that pilot training happening through other topics like airline operations, aircraft systems for larger aircraft, more complex environmental operations. We do simulator training, and obviously this is in much larger aircraft. And with the speed that students are moving through their careers, we see that training gap between those two things, the initial flight training and the airline training. The IATPL program is there to fill that gap. Airlines are seeing that with that lack of time building, pilots aren't necessarily coming in ready to train in the way that airlines need them to for these larger aircraft and more complex systems, more complex environmental issues, that type of thing, because they haven't had the time to go and gain that experience as they have in the past. So the IATPL is here to bridge that gap and ensure that students can not only succeed, but excel at the airline level when they're hired into their first job. So we see that airlines are really looking for that integrated ATPL license as they're looking for candidates to hire. As Kathy mentioned, we all recently attended an aviation conference in Montreal last week, and Transport Canada gave us not only the stats about the pilot shortage, but we also saw from Transport Canada that they showed IATPL graduates significantly outperform their colleagues on their initial airline courses. So the first course that you ever do when you're hired at an airline, Transport Canada has seen that pilots with this integrated license will pass with no issues, no additional training at a rate of about 96%. Whereas their colleagues who have other types of training, received other types of training, for example, self-paced training that we spoke briefly about before, they're not passing at nearly as high of a rate, between 40 and 70%, depending on the type of training that they've received. And so this is another reason why airlines are really looking for this IATPL license. They know that they can hire a graduate from our IATPL program, and that they don't have to worry about these candidates passing their first course at the airline. And that's important to airlines because every time a candidate comes in, a new hire comes in and isn't able to pass the course, that requires additional training. And of course, it's a cost to the airline. So airlines are really, really looking for this, and it's because of the statistical success rate. All right, so the course is structured around what we call components of effective flight crew performance, like knowledge of airline operational procedures, advanced aircraft systems, crew procedures, like standard operating procedures and use of checklists, multi-crew CRM skills or crew resource management skills, which we'll talk about in more detail later. And of course, personal proficiency is very important as well. And all of these provide layers of safety. So I want to introduce this now, and we'll come back to it later near the end of the presentation. So as an overview, candidates will graduate with an integrated ATPL license, or sorry, integrated airline transport pilot license, the highest level of licensing in Canada. They will also have advanced airline operational knowledge and multi-crew cooperation, or MCC skills. The advanced portion of the training consists of 2 phases of training, as Sydney mentioned. The first is the Airline Flight Operations and Airline Transport Pilot License, or ATPL ground school training. And the second is the multi-crew cooperation, or MCC training. So let's take a look at each of these in detail. But in a general sense, the program aims to provide greater safety standards for pilots through higher learning. Again, the things that airlines are really looking for, that they know when they hire someone from this program, they don't have to worry about that candidate. So things like flight operations procedures, aircraft systems for large aircraft, advanced communications and avionics systems, and those more complex environmental factors or weather factors. So phase 1, again, is our airline flight operations and ATPL ground school. Includes approximately 31 days of instruction, about 220 hours of instruction to prepare for the 2 Transport Canada written exams, the SAMRA and the SARON that Sydney has already mentioned. So that includes topics like civil Canadian aviation regulations, or CARS. You'll notice that in the airline world, we have a lot of acronyms, and this is only the beginning. There's more and more always to be added. So Canadian aviation regulations, air carrier procedures and policies. And this includes scenario-based exercises as well that allow students to improve their decision-making skills, which is another really important part of why airlines like this program. We also talk about advanced communications, navigation, and auto flight, overview of all modern aircraft avionics, including flight management systems, or FMS, which is something common in all large aircraft, modern aircraft, as well as warning systems. We talk about those environmental factors, or weather, which as pilots we're dealing with on a daily basis, of course. So we talk about advanced meteorology, high-level flight operations, and operations in hazardous conditions, things that, again, we have to deal with on a daily basis. In the summertime, things like thunderstorms. In the wintertime in Canada, we're dealing with lots of different things, ice and snow and all that kind of good stuff. So we learn how to manage those things. We talk about advanced theory of flight and flight hazards as well. Another thing that we cover for the exams, and as well preparing for the airline world, is advanced aircraft systems. So we talk about aircraft systems for medium to large aircraft, and this can be a huge help for students or graduates, I should say, going into their first airline course, where students can feel comfortable knowing that they've already had some exposure to these types of systems, and it isn't as much of a stressful situation to, again, pass those initial airline courses when there has been that exposure already through our course. So that's phase 1. After phase 1, the 2 exams will be written and passed. Transport Canada location. So again, that's the SAMRA and the SARON for the airline transport pilot license. So once that is all done, we move into phase 2 of the course, which, as Sydney said, is the fun portion of the course. But I will make mention that it's also a lot of work. And again, that work and dedication pays off, because this is the work that makes you airline ready, and why airlines like the integrated ATPL license, and in particular, this course. And I am going to share with you why as we go through the next few slides. So the second phase is our multi-crew cooperation, or MCC training phase. It includes quite intensive preparatory classroom instruction, so 16 days of classroom instruction, and then our practical training, which is 9 days or 9 sessions, plus additional observation sessions. So that practical training is the simulator training. It's conducted using state-of-the-art simulator technology, and we are doing our practical training on the Boeing 737-800NG using Sunwing standard operating procedures. So this is a great aircraft to have some experience on, as it is the most widely used aircraft in the entire world. And in Canada alone, there are several companies that operate the Boeing 737, including Sunwing, which I already mentioned, but WestJet, Air Canada, Swoop, all sorts of airlines operate this aircraft. So it's a really nice thing to be able to put on your resume. And through this MCC training, we teach our students to operate as co-pilots on complex multi-engine, multi-crew aircraft. And we also teach trainees crew resource management, or CRM skills. So I've mentioned CRM already a couple of times, but I do want to take a moment to tell you what exactly that is, because it's something that you might not have heard of yet. So CRM, or crew resource management, again, means effectively using all of our available resources to assure a safe and efficient operation. Again, safety is paramount. And it's a huge part of daily life as an airline pilot. We're constantly using these CRM skills. So these training items, they're not only covered in class, but of course, we continue to address them again and again as we go through the simulator sessions and really use them in real life. So I want to quickly take a look as we start the second part, the second phase, at just some statistics and the reasons why we sort of structure this phase as we do. So obviously in the last 50 years, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of airline traffic. Here you can see departures and flight hours have increased substantially. And as that has happened, we've also seen a huge decrease in the number of aviation accidents. But what I want to show you here is how those causes of the aviation accidents that are still occurring are changing. So while years ago, technical factors or mechanical failures were a large part of why accidents happened, technology has really advanced so that's not a very large factor anymore, although it does happen. It's quite rare. Now we're seeing aviation accidents, the few that do happen, are more trending towards human factors type of accidents. If we look at the accident causes then, technical issues, so more like along the mechanical lines, cause about 16% of accidents. Non-technical issues, more along the human factors side of things, cause about 84% of accidents. If we look at the training items that are typically trained in programs, non-technical items only constitute 2%, while technical items constitute 98% of the training items and the time spent training. So what we aim to change here in this program is to focus more on those non-technical issues to prepare students again for the real world, and again, being airline ready. So focusing on these things like crew resource management that I just mentioned, and that decision-making ability. So on that note, in the second phase, in that ground school portion, we take a look at advanced human factors in multi-crew operations. We do a review of aviation psychology, and again, talk more about CRM and its application in practical situations. So we spend 3 full days on crew resource management. And not only are we, having someone lecture, but we're actually doing activities in class to develop those skills for our students. And then, of course, we also spend time on a Boeing 737 ground school course, talking about the systems of this very popular aircraft. So systems, avionics, and the flight management system, or FMS, which is basically the computer. You can see it at the bottom of the screen here. We have 2 in the airplane. But the computer that allows the pilots to communicate with the aircraft for all sorts of things, navigation being the main one. And we also talk about and learn the standard operating procedures for the aircraft, talk about pre-flight briefings, and do pre-simulator practice, again, based on Sunwing procedures. So in terms of the simulator syllabus for the multi-crew coordination training, we do 9 4-hour sessions for a total of 36 hours. Each of these sessions includes 2 2-hour flight legs, plus instructor briefings both before and after. So we have a 1.5-hour pre-flight brief. And that may sound long, but it's there in order to prepare the students and make sure that they're getting the most out of this time in the simulator. And then, of course, at the end, we always want to debrief the students in order to give them positive feedback and feedback on things that they can improve on for the next session. For this training, we utilize CAE's most advanced flight simulation technology. So CAE is a training facility here in Toronto, trains pilots from airlines all over the world. They have multiple locations all over the world. And these simulators, the full flight simulators that we're using are the same simulators, as Sydney said, that airlines are using to train their pilots, that we use to train. So one thing to note is that these simulator sessions are scenario-based. So they're based on what we call in the airline world, and what we also use to train, line-oriented flight training, or LOFT type training. So what that means is that a LOFT session is scripted as an actual flight in real time between 2 airports. Okay, and so that's the key, that pilots are learning in a way that is realistic. So we have 9 total sessions. 5 of the sessions are conducted in an advanced Boeing 737 flight training device, or FTD, another acronym for you. And you can see an example of the flight training device on the top picture here. And 4 sessions are in the Boeing 737 full flight simulator. Again, that one you can see on the screen as well on the bottom right. And so these full flight simulators, like I said, are exactly what we as airline pilots use to train ourselves. And they're so realistic, in fact, that we log them as real time. They are incredibly advanced training devices. On top of that, to make sure that our students get the most exposure possible to the procedures, and again, allow them to excel, they are also required to attend observation sessions in the flight training device. Just some examples of what we're seeing in the second phase here. So I'm just going to go back. Every session will have several briefing points. The students are aware of what the items are that are to be briefed and performed in each session so that they can prepare for the session properly. And then we also do all of the preparatory items for the flight. We talk about that in class prior. And then, of course, for every session, we need to prepare things like the weight and balance that you can see here. And then here's just an example of the type of what we call a script or a simulator script that the instructor is actually running behind the scenes for the students. So in terms of the program highlights, the IATPL diploma program allows students, as Sydney said, to write the ATPL exams, the SAMRA and SARON, as part of the program, and therefore they will automatically obtain Transport Canada's airline transport pilot license accreditation upon completion of the regulatory flight hour requirements. So that's 1,500 hours. So we call this a frozen ATPL because the exams are written, but you don't actually hold the license until that 1,500 hour mark. However, having those exams written allows students to be a co-pilot on a multi-crew aircraft after finishing the program, directly after finishing the program. Whereas outside of IATPL programs, those exams can't be written until the candidate has at least 750 hours. So this is, again, a huge, huge bonus to this type of program. And after completion of the program, the graduates will have 5 years to acquire the necessary flight hours to obtain that ATPL license. So again, that 1,500 hour mark, you have 5 years to complete. And that is typically fairly easy to do. And especially when the industry is as busy as it is right now. Other highlights are that we're teaching quite advanced subjects that aren't taught in other programs, like advanced navigation systems, where we are talking about IRSs and INSs, flight management systems. And the reason we're able to do that is because we are airline pilots and we know exactly the type of thing that you're going to need to succeed there. Flight management systems I mentioned. Airborne weather radar is another thing that we cover, how to use that and how it works. And once again, we've seen it a few times now, but it is very important, is crew resource management. Students gain credentials and skills sought after by the airlines, like this multi-crew cooperation skill that is developed through our MCC training on the Boeing 737. Leadership and managerial skills, very important because airlines want to hire candidates that will eventually become airline captains. Situational awareness, something that we're constantly dealing with as pilots. We always want to be aware of what's going on around us. Decision-making and risk management skills, and again, our CRM skills. It also provides solid experience for employment interviews. So often airlines will have a simulator evaluation as part of the interview. So students who have already been in a simulator will have no issue with this. They have the confidence and experience to do well in that. And of course, knowledge of airline policies and procedures and the day-to-day expectations at an airline help a lot if you know what to expect in an employment interview. In terms of instruction, I've already mentioned this a couple times, but our AeroCourse instructors, we are all highly qualified airline pilots with thousands of hours of flight experience. Our instructors have a wealth of experience. We have both simulator and ground school instructors, training and check pilots, as well as some flight operations managers who are instructing in this program. And we're able to pass on all of that knowledge to the students. So as a review, the IATPL program is recognized under the Ontario Private Career Colleges Act. The course length is approximately 20 months. The ground school hours total about 800 hours, and that includes, as we said earlier, over 250 hours of the advanced ground school, and that's the portion that we're talking about right now, provided by AeroCourse. You are eligible to write your Transport Canada ATPL exams during the course and therefore qualify for the frozen ATPL. You get 36 hours of experience in an advanced simulator, experience in a multi-crew environment. And the flight training is very highly structured into 7 different phases. And that's part of the reason why we are allowed to have students write the ATPL exams, because of the structured nature of the program. All right, so now that we've covered the program syllabus and highlights, I want to circle back to the components of effective flight crew performance that we introduced earlier. So we can look at the components in the form of what's called the Swiss cheese risk analysis model. You might have heard of this. It's not only in aviation, but you might have heard of this in other industries as well. So in this model, threats appear all over the place. In aviation, that would be things like changing weather conditions, technical issues that we need to deal with. And those threats are mitigated using various layers of defense, which are the components like airline operational procedures, advanced aircraft systems, crew procedures, multi-crew CRM skills, and personal proficiency that we talked about earlier. And those are the things that form the basis of the course. So in this model, they are likened to pieces of Swiss cheese, hence the name of the Swiss cheese risk analysis model. And the holes in the cheese represent deficiencies in the layers of defense, which there are always going to be some. We're not perfect. And when they line up, it could lead to an incident. Therefore, the more knowledge that students have in these subjects, the more that we can fill that training gap that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, and the more layers of defense they have to deal with threats effectively. And so we can ward off these threats through these layers of safety. That is the goal of the IATPL course. And one of our students said it best when asked about the course. He said it just allowed him to be able to make better decisions. And again, that's the goal here. We are here to train safety-oriented pilots to make better safety-oriented decisions. Okay. To illustrate just how much skill our graduates come out of the program with, I'd like to show you a couple of videos. So the first is Rick, who talked to you earlier, taking off in the Boeing 767. So you're going to hear the various calls that both pilots make during the takeoff. And then we'll compare that to a video of our students afterwards. So here we go with Rick's takeoff in the Boeing 767.
It's gonna be V1161, 0164, 169. Ground out. Altitude 7,000 feet. No threat for 36. Yes, 90. 330 up to 54. That's the right of percent. Please reflect 51.2. Next will have release score. Thank you. Sorry. Fine, right, let know we're ready to go. For flight to the Anglin, because I'm really from Canada 009. Anyone? Press set. 80, right. One, rotate. What's the degree? Yeah. Okay. And my dress, man center. One, be nice to me. Roger.
All right, so that airline takeoff, and the next thing we're going to watch is a video of some of our previous graduates on their last simulator session in the program. So you'll notice that their calls aren't exactly the same because it's a different aircraft and different airline. But you'll see how much they've learned about operating a complex two-crew aircraft and the similarities.
Somebody knocks. Check. One. Heading. Also. From 0, find founder after takeoff check. 12-0.
Right, so even though the aircraft and the procedures aren't exactly the same, comparing the two videos shows a really impressive level of proficiency from our students over a relatively short amount of time. So under 2 years to be airline ready. And that's what the airline's like about this program. Let me go back here. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to touch once again on the future demand for pilots. Kathy touched on this earlier in reference to Canadian demand, which we heard about the ATAC conference last week from Transport Canada. And here we can see worldwide demand. So this is from CAE, our training partner. And so obviously COVID-19 caused a significant dip in travel for a while, as we all know, but travel is basically back to pre-pandemic levels at this point, and forecasts like this one published by, again, CAE, our training partner, in 2020 show that there is still going to be a significant increase in demand for pilots over the next several years. So by 2029, they forecast 484,000 active pilots worldwide, which will require an additional 45,000 business jet pilots and 219,000 airline pilots. So this need takes into account both industry growth, which is forecast, and as well replacing a large number of retiring pilots. So pilots are forced to retire at age 65. So what that means is a total worldwide demand for 264,000 new pilots over the next several years, with 65,000 new pilots needed in North America alone. So despite what we saw through the pandemic, the long-term commercial aviation outlook does remain strong. So again, good news for those of you who are interested in pursuing this career. If you do want to check out the demand outlook in more detail, the URL for the CAE website is shown below, and so you can have a more closer look at that. Lastly, I do want to talk about the exciting opportunities our IATPL graduates have after finishing the program. So first off, we have our partner JAS and the JAS Pathways program. So graduates of the IATPL program that obtain an 80% average on the TC exams are provided with an interview at JAS for a first officer position. They hire graduates with 250 hours. They offer our IATPL graduates 2 scholarships plus an interview, and those scholarships are awarded at the graduation ceremony. So we have the JAS Aviation Pathway Award for professionalism and the JAS Aviation Pathway Award for professionalism and diversity. The next opportunity I want to talk to you about is Porter. So Destination Porter is the program. Graduates of the IATPL program can be accepted into Destination Porter. It's their mentoring program. So graduates would be paired up with a Porter Airlines pilot for guidance in their career development. And then after having accumulated a minimum of 500 flight hours, they then have the option to interview at Porter Airlines for a first officer position. And lastly, and a very exciting new partnership for us, I mentioned Sunwing earlier, as we are using their standard operating procedures to train our graduates. And that has created a partnership with Sunwing. So very exciting that our top graduates of the integrated ATPL program will be recommended for an interview for a first officer position in the Sunwing Airlines cadet program. So what this means is that successful candidates will transition directly from the integrated ATPL program to flying a Boeing 737, which is a pretty significant career move for a young pilot. It's very, very exciting for us to have that partnership. All right, so that's it for the AeroCourse portion. I'm going to hand it back to Kathy to wrap us up.
If you could actually hand it back to me, Jess, Brampton Flight Centre.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we're just going to pull up the actual application process, and I'll walk everyone through it for those of you that are interested in applying with us. Everything is on our website. If you just go to our Fly With Us tab, you'll see the option of applying to either the IATPL or the college program. There is a application fee. It's $100 plus tax, and this is non-refundable. Earlier, we've been speaking about the Category 1 aviation medical, and this is very important. So this is one of the items that we would ask that you have ready. In the event that you didn't have it, at the very least, we need you to have the appointment completed and maybe a verbal from your doctor saying that you passed the medical, and at least we know that there is no follow-up or any further medical testing that you require. And then you kind of have an idea of when you would expect to receive that in the mail. Transcripts. So we're looking for either current or past. If you're coming directly from high school, we are looking for advanced math and physics in your senior years. If you're graduating from college or university, we would look at your transcripts from those institutions and see how you did. Someone had asked that in the chat room. So there are little nuances with that. We don't teach math and we don't teach physics. So those are two items we'd like students to come in and have a good firm grasp on that. 2 letters of reference. So hopefully two professionals or maybe teachers, maybe your flight training, your flight instructor could write a letter of reference. And we would like for them to state to us, like, why would you be a great candidate, for instance, for the IATPL program? We'd like to learn a little bit more about you through them and as well through your current resume. If you're a high school student and you haven't maybe had employment, you can still create a resume, put your school information in there if you do any volunteer work, your hobbies, and that sort of information. Your 2 to 3 page narrative. This is where you're going to do a little bit of research. You're going to see what types of jobs are you looking to maybe achieve or try in your career. How much money do you think you'll make? We really want you to go into this with, you know, your eyes wide open. So there's no surprises. Check out different companies. Canada has a lot to offer. Jess and Rick went over some of the options as well for direct entry, which is very exciting. And then it says, and then we have your introductory flight, which you would have completed prior. Get you into an aircraft and get you ready to do some flying. We also do an interview and a quiz. So we bring you in and really we're just doing an interview. We'll ask you questions based on your admissions package. We just want to get to know you better as a candidate. Are you able to commit to a 7-day week program? It is a lot for someone to do. Ground school is 5 days a week. We schedule you 6 days a week to fly. And it's like a fire hose of information coming at you. And so we're just trying to set up our students for success. The entrance quiz, there is nothing that you need to do in order to prepare for that. Everything should be, as it says, basic math, English, and a little bit of Canadian geography. Okay. So what do we have next? We have cost and financing. So the college program, you're looking at $73,500. That's without tax. For those of you that are outside of the province of Ontario, we have 13% tax. The IATPL, you're looking at $93,500. Unfortunately, BFC is not OSAP eligible. Typically, students would use RESPs that their parents had set up for them. There's the option of an educational line of credit through your banking institution. You may require a loan with a co-signer, maybe a parent or a guardian. And there are some scholarships that we have listed on our website. However, they're not typically awarded prior to the program. It's either during or at the end. So that's something just to keep into consideration. These programs really do not allow you to work. We do find that if students aren't able to budget properly, they go back to work and then they're not successful in the program. So sitting down with your parents, or if you're a mature individual, and just realistically looking at your budget and your time commitment for this. If you need a further price breakdown on either program, please just reach out to Sydney at admissions@bramfly.com and she can get that out to you. All right, so our program start date, it's going to be July 3rd, 2024, and this is both for the IATPL and the college. We will be receiving applications January 2nd to March 14th. We will be accepting 30 students, and we usually get about 75 applications. And we do feel that we have a very high graduation rate. Because we are a smaller school and our classes are smaller, we are able to really assist students and help them as best as we can. You're not hiding amongst 150 other students. And that is one of our commitments to you. We want to help you succeed, and we thank you for attending our seminar tonight. That was fantastic. And again, please reach out to us. The college IATPL program, Sydney would be happy to help you out with that. And then for self-paced, you can reach out to Rita. She's at info@bramfly.com. And I just kind of noticed someone sent a quick little chat question. It said, how many females are in the programs? Unfortunately, not enough. I do believe the national or regional standard is 6% of pilots are women. Maybe Jess or Rick could address that, but it is very low. So we encourage all female applicants to apply. Thank you.
Yep, that's about right, Kathy. So I'm with you and in encouraging more female applicants. We
Absolutely.
can up that average a little bit, yes.
Hi, gang. I just wanted to add a couple of more things in there, just to a couple of points in the presentation. One thing we said is that we break it down based on for the IATPL on the 2 exams, but actually we go way, way, way beyond what the exam requirements are. The material we build for the first phase 1 prepares everyone to do the actual training course that they would do once they get hired at the airline. And in all honesty, the course we've developed now for the 37 with Sunwing is basically an airline course. That's what we did. So if you've seen one airline course, you'll excel at it. The first one you do is always the hardest one. And I think that's why we're seeing our grads accelerate, performing very, very well. We had our first grad go through to Sunwing and just recently graduated from their program and is online as a first officer. He did exceedingly well, and that's going to bode well for the future partnership that we have with Sunwing. Now, I think if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. You've got Jess and I, we've had years and years and years of experience, but one of the things I thought I'd touch on, we haven't talked about, we have a bit more time, I think. What's the job like? What is the job of being an airline pilot? And what are your expectations of being an airline pilot? I thought I'd give you, Jess will jump in and add as well. A couple of things. It's a 24/7 job, meaning you could be working, you don't necessarily, at certain times of your career, when you're junior, the whole seniority system is based on when you're hired. And it controls your promotions, it controls when you get trained, it controls your monthly schedule, which is the bane of the existence of a lot of pilots, but that's the way it works. So when you first start out, you'll be working many of the holidays because the senior pilots are able to bid the holidays off. And it also depends on what airline you work for. Different airlines do their pilot scheduling or monthly blocks, we call them, which is your schedule for the month, different ways. But if it's a seniority based system, you'll have to get some seniority on the specific aircraft type that you're flying and what seat you're in. So your seniority tends to vary depending on where you sit at a particular time. So if for example, if you're a first officer on a Boeing 737 and you moved up to seniority and you started to get weekends off, and then you went back to captain on the 37, then you wouldn't get weekends off again, or Christmas or that. So that's one thing. It's also another point we always like to make. You never stop learning in the airline business. You do training depending on what airline you're at. Well, the mid-level size commercial operators, which we call them the commuters, have to do training once a year. At the major airlines like Air Canada, Sunwing, Jazz, Porter, they have to do training every 6 months. So you're going back to school every 6 months, and you have to maintain your professional standards, and that requires a flight test every 6 months to make sure the traveling public demands that we have a high level of skills so that we can handle any situation that may happen. And it goes without saying that that's important. So that's another thing. On the other hand, what are the benefits? We get a lot of time off. Traditionally, pilots work between, depending on what air carrier you're at and what aircraft you're on, you work between 10 and 16, 18 days a month at the most. Although I have worked more days depending, but That's generally what you do, and you tend to have a lot of time off. When you're off, right? There's other than when you're preparing for your annual training. We also recommend that you have a physical fitness regime, because maintaining your medical is very, very important as you get older. So healthy lifestyle is always encouraged by all the medical, and most of the pilots tend to have a very healthy lifestyle. But on the other hand, you get to travel over the world. The major airlines all have travel benefits. As a matter of fact, I'm talking to you from Kona, Hawaii right now. I'm out here with my family, and we tend to do a few trips a year. And Jess has probably traveled, not probably, she has traveled extensively in her career. So that is one of the beautiful benefits. If you love to travel, this is a wonderful job to do that. So I think that's all I have. Anything else to add, Jess?
No, Rick, I think you gave a really nice overview of what life as a pilot is like. So I'm happy to take any questions, and yeah, I've got not much to add.
I did see a couple of the chats coming in here. If it's all right, Kathy, if we still have some time. About the medical in Argentina. I wouldn't be all surprised if there is a doctor that is capable of doing Canadian medicals down there. Most countries around the world do have somebody that can do Canadian medicals. I don't know about Argentina personally, but I've heard a number of countries that pilots either commute, live in the area. I know there was a pilot that was living in well, it wasn't Sao Paulo, it was even down south in South America, and he commuted. And so there are possibilities that there is a doctor that is certified to do Canadian medicals down there. Something to look into.
I also just wanted to cover, I've had a few questions about the cost information and sort of the payment structure. So something Kathy didn't mention is, I'm just going to go back to the cost slide if you guys don't mind. So the cost of the college and IATPL programs, those payments of $73,500 and $93,500 are not all upfront payments. So we work on a pay-as-you-fly structure. So in terms of your flight training, after each flight, you will settle your balance with our dispatch center. Each flight is, I would say, varies between $300 to around $500, depending on what training you're doing and how long you're actually flying in the air for. But you can expect a cost of around a few $100s after each flight. Each of those have been subtotaled and calculated to give you this subtotal. The other payments that you make are ground school tuition payments. So those are larger deposits that you would make on specific dates. So I do have a price breakdown available that breaks down the cost of the program. It has the specific tuition installments as well as the dates that those would be due, as well as subtotals of what each license and the flights that are needed to complete each license have been subtotaled on a price breakdown. So if you would like to receive that, please send me an email. I'm just going to hop ahead to my email again. So you can email me admissions@brandfly.com, and I would be more than happy to send you the cost breakdown and just give you a better understanding of how the payment structure works, because you're definitely not depositing all of that money up front. Like I said, it's a pay-as-you-go sort of structure. And I did also want to mention, if anyone doesn't have any more questions, feel free to exit the meeting, but we'll stay live for a little bit longer to just answer any other questions that anyone might have. So feel free to direct those to us in the chat.
Doesn't seem there's any more questions, Sydney?
Okay, with that being said, I will send an email to everyone, just thanking everyone for attending the session, as well as sharing a link to this recording when it is available. So please feel free to reply to that email if you do have any other questions that weren't answered tonight, as well as feel free to send my colleague Rita info@bramfly.com an email if you have any questions about the self-paced program. But thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It was a great presentation, and thank you as well to Jessica and Rick for joining us from AeroCourse.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Our pleasure.
Bye guys.